we've had viewers, we've had people write in, ask questions. They're curious about how this is going to work, even though it's not final yet. So I'm going to ask you some of these. What forms of marijuana would you be able to purchase under this law?
Well, virtually anything you can think of. You will see adult use marijuana products in dispensaries throughout the state, including marijuana flower, which are the buds that people, I guess, most typically associated with smoking marijuana. You're also going to see THC concentrates in vape cartridges, along with other forms. We have a robust hemp-derived THC market here. I like that we're preserving that market. You're going to continue to see what we're calling low-dose edibles, both in gummy form and beverage form, continue to be for sale throughout the state.
How will this impact people with past marijuana possession charges?
That's a really great piece of this bill. And what we're going to do is expunge marijuana convictions, misdemeanor level convictions automatically, and then if you have a felony level conviction, you can apply for an expungement.
Talk about how those charges can impact somebody's life.
Yeah, well, I recently participated in an expungement clinic, and I was amazed. I mean, I knew this, for hearing it from other people, but to see the impact, meeting face to face with somebody who maybe made a mistake when they were younger and had that conviction follow them around through their life, it really drastically limits what you can do in employment, in housing, also impacts banking, child custody. It's really amazing what an expungement can do to really improve somebody's life.
This is one that I've gotten quite a bit, and a lot of people are curious about this. Will your employer be allowed to fire you if you test positive for marijuana?
Well, see, they won't be testing positive for marijuana, they'll be testing positive for THC. And honestly, you know, very low levels of THC have been available through CBD products for years, going back to 2018. So people might not realize taking a THC product probably was putting THC in your system. And again, that's been federally legal since 2018. We have a hemp-derived edible product law that went in place in July. So people have been consuming up to 5 milligrams of THC per serving since July. So there's no way to distinguish whether the THC came from hemp or marijuana. So we have laws in Minnesota that protect people from using products that are legal. And unless you're in a sort of safety sensitive role, or if your employer has some link to a federal contract that might make them enforce a zero tolerance policy, your job is probably safe here in Minnesota.
One woman asked this, and I think you basically answered it, but can your job take action against you if you partake off the clock, basically?
You know, what you do in your free time is your own business. That's the beautiful thing about this country. We have freedom. And in my opinion, if your employer shows up, or your employee rather, shows up to work and they can do the job as an employer, you have nothing to worry about. I mean, people probably consume alcohol in their spare time. The thing about THC is that it stays in your system for up to 30 days. So there is no breathalyzer equivalent like with alcohol. So you may have THC in your system from weeks ago, but that has it doesn't indicate anything about whether you're impaired at the moment. So frankly, if you show up and you're ready to work, then your employer should have no issue with whatever you're doing in your spare time.
How will this law impact law enforcement sobriety checks? If you're pulled over by an officer, how do they approach that?
So again, there is no breathalyzer equivalent for THC. A lot of the opponents of legalization like to indicate that makes this particularly dangerous. But there still are field sobriety tests that law enforcement can do. You know, alcohol is an outlier. Most drugs, there is no breathalyzer equivalent for, right? So you could be impaired by marijuana, alcohol, cough syrup, anything really. If you're impaired, you shouldn't be driving. You shouldn't be on the roads. Cops can use field sobriety tests to measure impairment. And the bill allocates a lot of money towards drug recognition experts so that law enforcement officials will be trained to recognize if someone is impaired by marijuana.
Interesting. We would be the third Midwestern state to legalize recreationally, I think. It's Michigan, Illinois, and us.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Missouri, if you have an expanded view of the Midwest, I suppose.
True.
Yeah.
That's true. What lessons can be learned from those nearby states when it comes to legal recreational drugs being legalized, or marijuana being legalized?
Yeah, I mean, California, or I should say Minnesota is not a trailblazer here. We're going to be number 23. So we have the advantage of seeing what's gone wrong in other states and seeing what's gone right. Our legislators have carefully watched what's happened in California, for example, where they probably set a tax rate too high and may have burdened cannabis businesses with too many regulations, and it's made the end product very expensive. And that means if the illicit market product price is cheaper than the regulated product price, you know, people are probably going to not leave the illicit market. So that's why we're keeping our tax rate low. We're trying to keep regulations relatively non-burdensome, because goal number one is put the illicit market out of business, keep this away from teens, regulate the product so that consumers can safely know that the product they're consuming isn't going to harm them.
And you mentioned teenagers there, and people are concerned. Will kids and teenagers have an easier time accessing marijuana, and what would be done about it in terms of this bill?
Yeah, in every state that is legalized, teen use has gone down after you legalize adult use marijuana. It's called adult use marijuana for a reason. When you regulate it and make people go to a dispensary to buy it, it makes it harder for teens to access. I could not do this work with a clear conscience if that wasn't true. I have kids, I don't want them using marijuana. Studies show that when adolescents use marijuana, it can adversely impact a developing brain. By regulating it, making sure the only place to get it is in a licensed dispensary, it just makes it harder for kids to access. I mean, kids can't access alcohol because they can't go to a liquor store and buy it. Right now, marijuana in the illicit market is thriving in Minnesota because it's not regulated. Once we regulate it, it'll be harder for kids to get, and teen use will go down in Minnesota.
Last question here. Where will people be able to use marijuana in terms of public spaces? Will they be able to sit on a patio at a restaurant and light one up?
We are doing some very unique things with public consumption. We will actually be allowing for cannabis events. So long as your locality permits it, you can actually throw a festival where you can have cannabis consumption at your event. You won't be allowed to walk down the street and smoke marijuana. That will still be impermissible, but we are going to be allowing for some consumption lounges, not smoking necessarily, but in private spaces, you will be allowed to publicly consume. So again, that is something revolutionary that Minnesota is doing. It's going to be really fascinating to watch that.
But in general, like it follows the same rules as smoking a cigarette. Like you can't smoke inside of a restaurant, you can't smoke necessarily outside of a restaurant, so you won't be able to smoke cannabis.
Yeah, we still have indoor air quality laws that prohibit you from smoking indoors. That's not going to change for marijuana.
Okay. That's all the questions I had. Have you heard anything else from other people? Any pressing questions that you've heard from folks out there that they're curious about that you want to put out there?
I think most people are always wondering, when can I actually go buy this stuff? And unfortunately, you know, it's going to take a while. It takes a long time to set up this program. The Office of Cannabis Management at this moment does not exist, and they need to create that. It's projected to have as many as 100 employees, so it's going to take some time to set that up. I expect they'll start taking licenses from cannabis businesses early to mid 2024, and maybe the first dispensaries will be open late 2024, early 2025, but it's coming.
Okay, so we're talking potentially 2 years.
Yep.
A little bit less than 2 years before you can walk into a store and buy it.
That's probably true. Of course, the hemp-derived THC products that are currently for sale will continue to be for sale for the foreseeable future. I mean, that market is thriving, particularly the THC beverage market. So that will continue to thrive even despite the adult use marijuana legalization bill.